Welcome to Pathways, a career podcast from the Idaho State University Career Center. I'm Mark Beaver. Today, we're speaking with Guillermo Raya, Director of Trio Talent Search at Idaho State University. It's a job that suits Guillermo very well, but Guillermo's pathway to this point is inspiring and quite interesting. He didn't even consider college as an option until the middle of his senior year of high school. But when he went, he dove in, all the way in. And because of that, he gained many of the skills that have allowed him to move up in his position and move on with his career. Please join us for our conversation with Guillermo. Hey Guillermo, how are you doing today?
Doing super good.
Well, thanks for coming in. As I've talked about, I like to have people from a lot of different jobs at the university on this show, and I think you have a very interesting job that fills an interesting niche and a very essential niche at the university. So could you briefly just tell us what your job is and maybe kind of like a bird's eye view of what you do?
Yeah, Mark. So for us, I'm the director for Trio Talent Search. We have different programs for trios. We have pre-collegiate youth. We have also pre-college adults, and then we also have college level programs. Our program specifically works with 8th to 12th grade students. So we help them with academic advising, ACT, SAT, study skills. We take them to campus visits. We just barely went to a visit last week during spring break to 3 institutions. So overall, we work with 17 different high schools within the state of Idaho, all the way from Jerome and between Idaho Falls. So we serve up to 1,600 students overall. Mainly my job is to make sure that our grant specific is meeting its objectives. So working with our students, our staff, our faculty, our school districts, making sure that these students have the tools and resources needed for them to ultimately enter into college. I'm actually an SSS alum, so TRIO has a program,
nice.
student support services, and part of that is to keep you going on into college and ultimately graduating. So it's more kind of a full circle for me to being in TRIO and now being one of the directors for Talent Search.
Awesome. So you said something there. So you have students from southern Idaho, Jerome to Idaho Falls, but you took them to schools in North Idaho. So you're not necessarily just recruiting to ISU?
No, I think that's the really good thing is if a student joins by 9th grade, they can go up to 16 different colleges. So we go to University of Utah, Utah State, College of Eastern Washington, College of Western Idaho. We go as far as Montana Tech, Washington State University. So we want to make sure the students who might want to have maybe like a smaller college like Lewis Clark or a bigger institution like University of Idaho or Utah State, that they get that experience because I don't know about you, but when I went to campus, it was the very first time that I went to campus when I actually moved in. I never went to see the campus before I actually enrolled. And I think it's really good for these students to feel it, see what it's like, and ultimately think, is this the right place for me? Because for some students, it might be overwhelming or it might be just the perfect size.
Right. No, that's interesting. I've thought about that a lot more as I've gotten older, met friends who put a lot more thought into college than I did, is that how much they put into their campus tours. And, I think that it's kind of part of, the culture that we grow up in, our family culture. And I mean, obviously that's where TRIO comes in a lot is, we can talk more about TRIO in a second, but is it all first gen students or majority? Yeah,
the majority of our students that we serve are either first gen limited income students. So similar to my background when I was a student as well too. The fantastic part about this one is students who come from first gen or limited background households or experiences, they tend to not have as much guidance when it comes to college. Like, right. Hey, do your college application or complete your financial aid, or this is the institution that you should be looking for. This is what a major looks like, or even the terms. Mm-hmm. And so I think for them to see what a campus is, what the application process looks like as we help them through that process, I think is really beneficial because for them, ultimately, they don't really have sometimes a role model or a mentor to guide them through that process. Right. And they might be lost, and for them to ask for help might also be a challenge.
Yeah, it's intimidating. And where do you start?
Yeah, and for them, they just don't know where. And that's kind of where we fall as far as TRIO, is to help these students figure out, hey, let's do a career assessment, right? Let's do a True Colors or an MBTI. Let's see where your skills are at. Let's see what hobbies to include and find colleges that would fit your interests as far as your major. And even the word major for them, they might not even know what that word is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that as well. I mean, just, I don't think I even realized until halfway through my college experience that different colleges they have different majors. Not all colleges have the same majors, and some colleges really excel in certain departments or kind of units. I kind of just figured that you go to college, there's Harvard's harder than University of Idaho. I'm guessing, costs more, but like they're the same classes. I think that was kind of where my mind was. And then you start to realize each college is kind of its own thing a little bit. And I mean, going back to those college campus tours that you're doing, I mean, that's so important. Even like I was saying for myself, I knew what BSU's campus looked like because my sister went there. And that's before BSU was good at football. So it was very kind of just like spread out small city campus. And, I'd been to U of I just at a high school, the Visit U of I day. But really don't think I got a great pulse, but that was really kind of maybe a couple basketball camps. I'd stayed in some dorms. They all seemed the same to me, basically. But giving students that experience to kind of get like more of a deep dive and like have like a guide is incredible. That's an incredible experience for students.
And I think it really is, because I think as a student, you just don't know where to start with. Like, as we talked about before, we don't understand what colleges or majors are within that institution, what resources are available, tutoring, right? Even basic things like that. And so what we do is we connect our students with resources on campus. When we do a college tour, we try to connect them with a TRIO program that's within the institution. We're also reminding them these are the program or services that will be provided to you, and generally most of them are free, right, for students. But I think it gets them a feel of what the institution is if it has their major, because I think for them they're sometimes making a decision based on a family member or someone that they might be dating, and I think for them is to make that individualistic choice, like I want to come here because of these reasons.
Right. Yeah, or friends.
Pressure from friends.
I got 5 friends going here and friends
I have to
going here. Yeah. And that part of that is that, it's scary. It's scary to kind of start over again in a new place. But yeah, I mean, it really gives students an opportunity to really hit the ground running. Like when they get to college, you're talking about all the services that they can access, where those are at, put some faces to names in those places, and then to always have like yourself as a contact, someone they can trust and kind of go back to wherever they land. Say like, hey, I forgot who I talked to in this department. Can you remind me, or can you connect me? I mean, that is a huge head start on a college experience.
Yeah, and I think even for myself being a instructor with Bengal Bridge, I think having them understand that there are resources, there are skill set courses that you can take, because for them, they might not know how to ask for that assistance, or they just might not know who to go to. So having that connection or that mentor or that individual who can help you on campus, I think is super crucial. I don't know about you, but for myself, going to a professor's office hours might not have been something that comes to mind right away. And I think that's something so simple that could help a student out so much. And for our students, we really prepare them on how to address or how to work with their college professor, because ultimately they also have a say in your grade. But in scholarships and internships and networking, you lose out on opportunities like that just because our network is our net worth. And a lot of our students who are first gen, they just don't have that network sometimes, and for them to get connected is super crucial.
Right. I've never heard that axiom before. Our network is our net worth.
Heard it here first.
They heard it here first. Is that trademarked? Do you have that?
It is now, but I think I've heard it before, and I think it was really important to understand that your network is really crucial, especially before college, during college, and even during college is when you get to know other individuals, right, who might be acquaintances or friends, because when you graduate, that opens a door, because I wouldn't have gotten my very first position if it wasn't for one of my really good friends from college. She connected me to the director of admissions here, who then contacted me. So it kind of came full circle, is your network can really open up opportunities and doors. And that's how ultimately I got put on for my first position as a admissions advisor, and then it opened the door for my second position as a faculty instructor with Bengal Bridge and first year transition, and that actually opened up the door for myself currently for this position itself.
Yeah, that's incredible. But I mean, this is something that we talk to students about in career and life planning classes. We have a day that's just networking, and for me as a fairly introverted person, networking is a necessary evil. And, something that I like this is okay. Like a one-on-one. I love having a conversation one-on-one, but to be at like a conference and to, have your plate of food or your coffee and kind of mingle and meet people that's daunting.
It's challenging.
Yeah, it is scary to me. And the connections that you get out of those are invaluable. So, obviously like the necessary evil of like, all right, the benefit of doing this is going to be huge. And and it's a skill. So like learning how to do it, it can help you overcome that. Learning some of those kind of some tricks to networking a little bit is going to help you actually be able to do that. It's like, kind of like learning how to write or learning math, just learning some of the skills to be able to do it. But as you were saying, yeah, your college professors, who I never talked to in my first 2 years of college, and then later I met so many people who had such great relationships with their college professors. They'd go to their houses for dinner, and these people connected them. They connected them to grad schools. They wrote them letters of recommendation. They gave them these pathways to the next step, which, I was always kind of a little bit, I don't know, like envious is a bad word, more I guess I like regretful maybe that I hadn't taken advantage of some of those connections. So yeah, that's incredible that you can kind of help set that up a little bit.
I think it's really good. And you touched about something really important is as an introvert, right? I'm an introvert as well too. And I've learned that you don't have to be an extrovert to be able to network, right? You don't have to necessarily change who you are as a person to be able to connect to others saying, hey, my name's Guillermo. I'm looking for these opportunities. And I think that's something that a lot of students have that fear of is approaching individuals or asking for help. Because sometimes in the mindset is, what if they say no? But also, what if they say yes? What if doors open?
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of no's, and that's going to happen. One thing that was really crucial for me is understanding how letters of recommendation really benefit you is when I applied for a lot of scholarships and internships is your letter of recommendation is a really important part. I actually sit on one of the boards for one of the largest Latino networks within the state and also within national. I actually did review about 80 applications just recently, and the letters of recommendation was actually scored. So it was given a score out of 5. And so what happened is some of these letters of recommendation were just really basic. Guillermo's an awesome, fantastic individual. I loved getting to know him. He was in my class, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And so for us, as somebody who can open the door for some of these really fantastic internships, we want to be able to see that in your letter of recommendation that these individuals know you and they can really attest to your skill sets and your overall ability. Because one of the marks that I asked for on there was, can the student handle a challenging environment? So a lot of these internships are based in DC, and some of these students would not be able to meet those requirements just because based on their letter of recommendation. That could really help or completely destroy your application overall.
Yeah. So pivoting a little bit to kind of more like the nuts and bolts of your job. So you travel a lot, right? Am I gathering that? You seem like you're, just trying to nail down this conversation and, just seeing you around campus, it seems like, yeah, you're out a lot, right?
Quite a lot. And I really love that aspect. It was hard during COVID to be working remote because I like to talk to people even as an introvert. But I really like this aspect of my position that it's not just a daily office. I'm not just here from 8 to 5 and just completing my tasks and then going home. Mm-hmm. I have the ability to travel, to meet with staff, meet with students, meet with community members, whatever the situation might be. So traveling is a really big part of my position. And some people love it and some people might not be what they're looking for specifically. But one thing that I love about that is that flexibility or being able to adapt to a schedule. Even with travel, I do travel quite a lot as well too to conferences. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that's important to always maintain your skill sets or best practices, and that's what TRIO does in working with students. So traveling to different areas, in the different areas within the state of Idaho, but also national, being able to travel has been a fantastic time. I traveled quite a lot for admissions, just being in California and New York and Washington and Oregon and Nevada, just seeing the world that I didn't really get to see as a student just because I grew up poor.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Guillermo Raya, Director of TRIO Talent Search at Idaho State University. So, yeah, that's one of those life balance things of a job. I gather that you enjoy travel. We were just before we got on the mics, we were just talking about a trip you had just gone on, kind of all over Europe. Is that something you do?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I love traveling the world. I think, Mark, I think one of the regrets I didn't do, or that I didn't participate in college, was study abroad.
I agree. Same thing. Yeah.
I really regret. I don't have a lot of regrets from college. My biggest one is study abroad. I didn't get the chance to go. I didn't know that there were scholarships like Gilman that you could apply for, right? And so for me, I went to travel just last month in February. I went to Europe, so I went to Paris and to France. Well, I went to Paris and then I went to London, but I've traveled to about 20 different countries, and that has been really, really awesome for myself just because I love to see the world.
Yeah.
Best place, hands down. I really liked Bangkok, and I really liked Seoul. I think going to Asia was an amazing experience, and even seeing the United States, seeing as many national parks as possible. So I do love my work. I enjoy working with first-gen limited income students, but I also really like being able to have that flexibility to travel as well too.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was in college, I just didn't think the study abroad was for me. My friends who were participating in study abroad all had like Spanish minors, and so I kind of figured you gotta have a major that's related to it. And even though I was interested, I didn't even go to figure it out, which is something that I try to tell all of our students now. And I think you said something that was interesting there too, even seeing the United States. So obviously here at ISU, we participate in National Student Exchange, where you can exchange to different colleges and universities in the U.S., Canada, and U.S. territories. I think that's just an amazing opportunity for students on many levels, whether it's just to see like how our country is actually like kind of made up of many different cultures in some way. But also to have that ability to be in a city, to network at like maybe a place you would be thinking about going for grad school or something like that.
Yeah, and I think even with that one even with you do study abroad, I think you grow as an individual, right? You're still going sometimes for a traditional student in your 20s, you're still traveling and you get to go and experience a different culture. And I think some companies look for that, having the ability to work with other individuals that are different from your own experience or your own backgrounds, I think is important. And NSC, I think that is a fantastic opportunity as well to go to a different institution. Maybe, like you said, go on to grad school, check out if you want to live there in the future or if it's city is what you're feeling like.
Yeah.
That would have been really nice if that would have been offered at my previous institution.
Right. And maybe it was when
And
I
I
was
just
in
didn't
undergrad.
know.
Yeah. I mean, well, for me, I can't speak for you, but I think that too. It's like maybe this was an option, and I just once again never even looked into it or considered it, even though there was a point when we were talking about, in North Idaho it gets dark pretty early, and there was a point when I was like, I want to go somewhere that's a little warmer and has a little more sun, and I thought the only way I could do that would be like to transfer schools, and it just wasn't going to work. And then there's all these other options like WUI and NSE, things like this, other ways to work it out. But I just didn't. I mean, I think that I didn't have that kind of those supports around me. I hadn't built them up. It was on me as well to go investigate those things a little bit.
Yeah, I think as a student, you just don't know what you just don't know, right? Sometimes we don't seek that help out, or we just don't understand that there are events going on. I mean, every campus, for the most part, will have events that talk about NSE or study abroad or whatever the resources might be. So definitely putting yourself out there. I think that's one thing that I did really well is trying to participate on campus or even off campus activities. You get to meet other individuals, right? Meet friends, but also you get to know what's provided to you as a student for free generally. So I think that's a really good opportunity for students to do.
Yeah, that's huge. So can you talk a little bit more about some of those things? Because I think that's huge, is just putting yourself out there, going to things. What are some things that you did when you were in college?
Oh, I really liked being part of a club. I think being part of a club gives you really good organizational skills, leadership skills, communication skills. Those skills are necessary when you graduate from college, because college, yes, it's important to go to class and to do your homework 100%. I don't disagree with that. But the other part is if you just go to class and you go home, you're not going to have the skill sets or the abilities to work in some of the environments that they're looking for specifically, employers, right? So I think for myself, when I'm looking to hire someone, is I want to see that they've been involved, had some skill sets that they can come with. And I think those ones I learned when I was an RA, a resident assistant on campus. I was an RD, a resident director. I held different positions on campus through different clubs and organizations. You don't have to be part of every single club, right, or every single organization, but that gets you some of the skill sets and friends that you can network. That's how I found out about a internship. It's called Student Action with Farm Workers. That's the first time I ever found out about my first internship that I did was through an on-campus activity through Farm Worker Awareness Week.
So how do you, for students who might be interested in like something, like a club is pretty easy. You figure out when the meeting is, show up, see if you like it. For something like a RA, what advice do you have? How did you get into that position? How can students kind of figure that pathway out?
Yeah, no, I lived on campus in my first year of college. And even if you didn't live on campus, you can still be a part of an RA, right? So you can still go to every institution is going to be different. Some institutions require you to live on campus. Some require you to take a semester course. But I lived on campus. I really liked my RA that I had my first year. And so from there, I decided, you know what? I think it'd be a really fun experience to be a resident assistant. And I did. And they paid for my room and board, which financially helped me out a lot. But even with that one, just again, some of those skill sets, working in a team, communicating, being able to organize and lead and implement programs and projects, I used that when I applied for my very first position in admissions here at Idaho State. Those are the things that I learned right through success and failures as being an RA to ultimately landing my very first position. So I would highly recommend getting involved in any leadership position, whether it might be an RA, president of a club, anything that could really showcase and build those skill sets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you said success and failures. I mean, I think that I've talked about this on this show before, but I'm a huge fan of failures. And I think that in our culture, we're so afraid to fail, that we're afraid to take the risk. And, you know, one, if you don't take the risk, you might not get the reward. Two, even if you fail, there's so much you can learn.
So much learned right there, yeah.
Yeah, like almost more than your success, really, in many ways.
Yeah, and I think, and you said it perfectly, is that sometimes we're afraid to fail, but I think that's where you build the most skill sets from what could have done differently, right? And in so many job interviews, they're going to ask you, tell us the time that you failed. What would you have done differently? And if you don't have those failures, it's hard to build those skill sets. And even for myself, when I'm working on something or thinking about my next career move, I say to myself, I know I'm going to fail, right? I know that's going to happen. I know I'm not going to be perfect at this, and that is okay. Because if not, it puts so much pressure on you to be successful and to have all these stellar things said. But ultimately, failure really brings out some of the best qualities that one can have. Your resume gives you the highlights of your successes, but if you were to reverse it and give us your failures, it basically gives you your resume that you have right now in verse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with a success, you don't necessarily know at which step things went right or were inconsequential to the success. Or with a failure, you can be like, oh, right there. Like that's kind of where that's where things started falling apart. Like there, and there. And those are things that I can work on and get better at. So yeah, obviously how you learn. So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
That's a good question. I didn't really think about it when I was a kid. My parents had a third grade education, so I'm from Idaho Falls. So for us working in the farms and doing field work, I never thought about going to college. Honestly, it wasn't until my senior year in high school, that I finally decided to go to college. So I never thought of what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go to. And so for myself I didn't want to work in the fields anymore. I didn't want to be a farm worker. And that's when it kind of changed for myself. Even in college, I didn't even necessarily know exactly because I just didn't know about majors. And I chose the major that my friends were going to. And so do I love my business administration major? Yes, right? And I have some good skill sets from that one. But it wasn't until I did an internship with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute in Washington, D.C. that said, Guillermo, you really like working with communities who are similar to yours, who are underserved, who are first gen. It wasn't until then that I really found out that that's what I wanted to do. So it was my internship in my last summer before my senior year that I figured out I want to work with students who were similar to myself. And that's why I went to work with admissions. I wanted to help other students and guide them similar to someone who guided me through that process. And I just didn't know it.
Did you have that mentor?
Yeah, I had different mentors who helped me out. Ultimately, one of my first ones was with Sully Bruce. She was a recruiter at the time. I also had really good connections with our college assistance migrant program that we actually have here that helps first-gen students who are from farm working backgrounds go into college and complete their first year. So I did have those select few mentors at the beginning, and that mentorship just grew even more as I entered my professional career. You definitely need mentors. Those are the individuals that can help you even more grow in your own successes.
Right. It's like that connection with the professor that we were talking about earlier to some degree. How did you find those mentors? Just for like people out there who are like, I need someone to help me with this, so how do you go about that?
Yeah, no, a super good question. So I think for myself is either I met them at a conference or met them through some sort of different connection. And I really valued their way of leadership style. I really valued their work ethic, and I valued their position that they were in. And for myself, I thought, I want to be in a similar position. How can I get to where you're at? And so that's when the questions come out. What background or what experiences led you to where you're at specifically? And I thought, okay, how do I get those skill sets now? How can I get to where they were at? Right. So I think that's kind of what led myself to asking different mentors, and don't be afraid to ask for mentors, right? I didn't really ask the individuals. I said, hey, I want some advice or some help and guidance. Right. And I think that's where that relationship really blossomed.
Right. That's where it starts. I think I heard someone recently say that, true mentorship doesn't come from a kind of a structured mentor-mentee arrangement. It comes from like this kind of organic situation where you see someone, you're like, wow, that person I feel like is maybe on the same wavelength as me. I admire them. I admire the way they're doing things, the way they carry themselves through the world even. And so that's harder though, right? Because we have all these programs that are like, hey, here's your mentor that you're set up with. And it's a kind of a forced situation. And you can use that. I mean, you can definitely glean some information. You can talk to them about how to find other people who you might have a more organic relationship with. But also, like you're saying, it's one of those things. It's kind of scary, or it's kind of something that a lot of young people, or even, maybe people who just haven't heard that this is essential and that it's easy. It's a hard thing to do. But, if you see that person starting off with something as easy as, hey, can you tell me a little bit about how you got to this place? Like, you don't have to walk up and say, will you be my mentor? Right? Yeah. Like that's right. That's kind of an intimidating thing, obviously, for both sides. But I mean, people love to talk about what they do, and people love to help other people, is what I found for the most part. And like you said, like that's a perfect way just to kind of plant that seed is, hey, can you tell me more about your job and how you got here? And then, like you're saying, let it blossom from there a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's kind of important to think about in the aspects of you can select your mentor. Sometimes you are put in with some sort of advisor, right, in an advisor role, and they are provided for you. But you can also search out beyond just an academic advisor or beyond just your professors that you have, which are still really good resources. But you can choose individuals that fit your similar backgrounds, but also where you want to be at ultimately. Even now, Mark, for myself is I'm looking to transition eventually into my next career move. And so even one thing that I'm asking for in interviews is I get that they ask me questions on how my skill sets or how my abilities will bring value to their organization. But now I'm asking them questions. How can you bring value to me? So even it's a reverse interview. How I think about it is you as a leader or supervisor, what are your top 3 skill sets, right, as a leader or supervisor? Because ultimately, I still want to grow in my career. Your career doesn't stop growing when you graduate college. You continue to learn. And I think that's something that we don't keep in mind is we want to learn and to evolve and to think about things differently. Because if not, we stay stagnant, and it really impedes on our ability to be promoted or go to the next level that we want to. Right. So for myself, next supervisors is thinking, what can you do to add value to me just as much I can add value to your organization?
Interesting. I like that. I bet that is very intriguing.
It is deep. It's a deep thought right there.
I bet that is. So as we kind of wrap up here, do you have any words of advice for career seekers out there, be they just starting in college experience or even like kind of midlife career change?
Yeah, I think two things is, don't be afraid to change where you're at. For that is, you can change your major, right? You can change your degrees. You can change your, right before graduation, you can change your current position. And that, I think, is really good, because sometimes we stay in this mindset of, I have to stay in this position forever and I can never move. And I think that's kind of a hard mentality or a mindset to have. And I think the other one is getting involved, go try new things, get involved in internships, because internships ultimately changed my aspect or my career as far as where it was placed at. And so for those students who are in currently as an undergrad or even graduate, is getting involved, try new things, because you just might not know. Maybe you are a dental hygiene major, like I had a student before, and she volunteered once at a school district and she loved it, and she changed her major and she kept on going for 2 more years to be a teacher. Don't be afraid to try new things, and it's okay to change.
Right. Awesome. Beautiful. Well, thanks so much for coming in today, Guillermo.
Thank you.
And that was our conversation with Guillermo. I love that he just threw himself all in when he got to college and just did it all. And that he had the ability to kind of seek out those mentors and those experiences that were going to help him get to the next step. For so many of us, that's something that's hard to do if we even know that it's an option. And it's amazing that we have programs like TRIO and people like Guillermo who fit so well into those programs and give all those next students that information that they need to succeed and move on. If you're interested in your career options going forward, please feel free to visit the ISU Career Center website at isu.edu/career. Likewise, if you're interested in hearing about some other careers and pathways here at Idaho State University, you can check out all of our past episodes on Spotify, YouTube, and at kisu.org. Likewise, you can hear us live on the air on KISU Radio, the second Wednesday of every month at 7:30 p.m. For the Idaho State Career Center, this is Mark Beaver, wishing you a fantastic